Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy here. 4 nerds by nerds, hanging out with the full crew today.
Ryan.
Ted.
Nate.
And today we're going to do a player's tip, and we're going to get into character with characterizing your character. Can we say character a few more times?
That's a lot of character.
Characterization.
But we have to rudely interrupt that and tell people about the Nerdarchy newsletter. So if you guys want to be up to
The Nerdarchy newsletter, what is it, man?
Jesus Christ! Here, take my money. Sorry, I'll buy you a sandwich. The Nerdarchy newsletter is where you can get most up to date on what's going on with Nerdarchy, other nerdy news. Dave even sneaks in some like unique tips, player tips, GM tips
Happens
in there
from time to time.
Yeah.
I read it.
Yeah, Nate reads it. So that's definitely a
This
incentive.
game's already gotten better.
Yeah.
But is that all?
But no, wait, there's more. You can also learn how to game with Nerdarchy. We're going to be getting ready to, within the next month, in December 2015, because this will be here for a while, hopefully. We'll be running games through Google Hangouts, and you can find out how to do that. So,
But only if you sign up for the newsletter.
In the description below.
That's true, so do that. And back to our regular scheduled programming. of
Characterization of character's character.
Yeah. That are charactery.
We've been inspired to do this because we have just got done. We just got back from Ontario, Canada. We were out there doing a keynote speaker thing.
Yeah. We did the modern D&D Warlock Pact. What is the one with the Ghost in the Machine where we like beamed there and
Yeah,
beamed
and
back?
then beam back.
Yeah, we're like epic level.
Epic.
Ghost in the Machine Warlocks.
So, what about this characterization? We're talking about character traits, the stats, basically, and what's on the mechanics of the paper, and how to turn that into
Basically,
like a real character.
Fumbling your water.
Yeah, fumbling your water. Basically, we want to talk about how you can, as players, get into character, and we can look at it from several different ways. You can look at it from an experienced role player, someone who's confident and comfortable role playing, or we can look at it as someone who isn't comfortable with role playing yet, or is new to the hobby. I prefer to tackle this from that perspective because I feel like it's going to benefit more people that way.
Right.
This game, right? We're a group of adults here playing make believe. Okay, so sometimes it can be a little hard to act weird in front of your friends, and it is weird because you're essentially putting on like this mini performance where you're acting and you're getting into this role of a character that you've created, to play in this game, right?
Yeah.
So,
and if you're not like a theater geek or whatever, like it's
weird.
significantly harder. If you're like the crossover nerd jock, like it's quite a different experience.
yeah, I mean, maybe you can practice with your honey a little bit beforehand, but hey, well, or maybe you don't want to do that in your game table,
Right?
But so this can be a really tough obstacle, but you don't have to do it all at once. Like you can ease into it. You can come up. Like I've done several tips on the newsletter about this, and Ryan has an article in the queue waiting to go on a way to use a particular feat that's going to help identify a character using that and make them a little more unique, and the role playing can actually spring from that. We've all done it where we focus on different attributes from the character, or whether it's their class or their race, when you're playing with type or against type. There's all these different things you can kind of chuck in there and use to grasp on. You don't have to be original. Use tropes.
Yeah, a trope or like a tick. Like a tick could be either like a physical thing that they tend to do, like do they whistle when they get stressed, or like do they whistle when they're picking a lock or something like that, which is worst rogue ever because you're not being very sneaky when you do that.
Do you have a tell when you lie or when you're uncomfortable? Is there some kind of thing that you do on a regular basis? Dave, you were talking about before about when you make a character that sometimes you'll make like half a dozen things that they say, when they're frustrated or they're cursing, and those things. People have sayings,
Yeah.
Or another thing too, like Maximus Decimus Aurelius, like from Gladiator, he had this cool thing of like just before the fight, he'd grab a little bit of earth, put it in his hands, and like it only happened 3 times in the movie, but you kind of got the sense of like every time he had a fight, he was kind of doing that, gritting up his hands.
Yep.
Now, I was saying that with what you were saying about that tick, or that kind of like whenever they lie, they have a tell. Well, I would say that would be representational of a bad stat backing up their deception ability.
Or a bad roll.
Or a bad roll, like if you wanted to go. Well, I mean, if it's always happening, then they probably aren't really good at deceiving people, because after 2 or 3 times, you're like, this guy always does this.
Why does he twitch like this
Is
before
that
he
because
talks
he's
sometimes?
lying? Like he's winking at me, or he's got like a little nervous tick, or his nose twitches.
Looks like he's in pain.
Or he always looks down and scratches his face.
Like
when he's telling
charisma
a story.
is his dump stat. He's not proficient in it, and this player never rolls above a 10. Like,
Yeah,
for doing
so
it.
he, even when he tries to lie well, you know, it's going to be the luck of the roll.
So,
whether or
quick
not it
example:
happens.
I played a warlock fighter with a fiendish patron, and I dumped the decks, and basically, he became a warlock because there was an accident at the smithy where he worked, or his family smithy, and he basically pinned under rubble in a burning building. He was going to die, so he takes a pact in order to get out of this situation. But the pack didn't fix his mangled leg, so now he walks with a limp, and doesn't move so well. That's an example of just taking a stat and incorporating into your character his backstory and his presence. And in Ted's game, I have a dwarf that plays very, very dwarfy to people that expect him to be that way. Almost as a way, his way of making fun of them. But people that are more open and accepting, he just treats them like a regular person, and he acts more like himself. It's just a random characterization I came up for that character that I put in there. Some people probably notice, and some people don't notice at all. But you can do things like that to help you get into character.
And also too, so I did in one of Scott Garvey's short games. Both Ted and myself were playing paladin multi-class characters. So I was playing a half elf of our deity Marathiel, the matron of manacles. So it's like she's kind of a lawful neutral elven deity. I don't know if anybody picked up on it, but I made that character gay, and he was always subtly hitting on Ted's character. I mean, it was never overt, but it was basically if Ted was injured, my character's always there, looking to offer him aid and looking to heal him, or in a fight. It's always
Ted
there.
didn't know until now.
Yeah, and I was doing it very subtly because I was never gonna make it overt, and I was also too I figured, all right, the matron of manacles, so he could have a little bit of a fetishism going on with that, because a little bit of an.
Well, that was the one that had the imps chained, right?
Yeah, that's the one that had.
So he had his
would
knight,
bind
his knight
demons.
His knight retainer.
Yeah. My character asked if you want if you wanted me to escort you back to your quarters and things so it was a bunch of little subtle things. I didn't ever want to play a stereotype of a gay character,
right.
But I just slipped that.
He wasn't
little
picking
note,
up what you were playing.
that little note in there. Yeah.
Never saw it at all.
Yeah. And I was also too there's a little bit of that cliche of the Siegfried and Roy thing, two gay guys that like tigers type thing. They're well, you're a paladin and I'm a paladin, so
oh yeah, so you had a lot of similarities.
Yeah, maybe we have more in common. Yeah, so
Wow.
We both smite evil.
yeah, smiting evil.
Smiting evil together.
Bro, we smite evil, bro.
Yeah. Would you like to cross swords?
Yeah, so I didn't pick up on that really either. I just thought you were being really nice to him.
Yeah. I mean, but isn't that what you do with people you're trying to court?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You're
show-
extra nice to that
you show 'em
person.
your best side.
Yeah. So.
With both of it's hard to think now.
Looking at stats can be viewed at from multiple perspectives. We take Dave's warlock with the messed up leg. Well, he says he put the dump stat there, so that means he's got an 8 dex. Well, an 8 dex could be you've got an injury. It could be that you're clumsy. It could be that you're prone to accidents. You're not clumsy. It's just
You're unlucky.
You're unlucky.
You're actually nervous about making mistakes, so you make them more.
Yeah. So you can take a stat and have it go in many different directions, so that, as Ryan had said in a previous video, that someone who's got the same stat array, you can be 2 very different characters, because
If you explain every single stat,
Right.
everybody's explanations are going to be divergent at some point.
No, I almost feel too. I'm sorry to cut you off, Dave. 1 second though. For instance, say you're playing a warlock dragonborn, right? And you have an 18 strength. What if you portrayed him as being built more like Ryan? But but his strength.
You're saying an 11-18 strength?
Maybe, but say perhaps. Part of his patron pack deal was he's supernaturally strong. Who says that the 18 in his physical stat actually has to come from
His own physicality.
his own physicality?
Yeah,
Like you could do interesting things like that.
It's similar to a sorcerer having a fantastic charisma, but they just kind of look normal, but they have that otherworldly presence. Like there's just something going on. Maybe it's lightning in their eyes or something amazing is going on.
Makes you pay
around
attention to them when they
like
walk
your
in.
hair sticks up on your arms whenever they walk in the room because they're Stormborn or something. And
Well,
they're just-
that's a good example. I'm sure we've all met people who are comparatively good looking
Well,
as
even like
anybody else.
movie stars.
But
Oh,
there's
okay, you're
something-
saying average.
Yeah, but there's something about them that draws people to them more so than someone else, and it has nothing to do with their looks. And that's just raw charisma.
Yeah. Actually, when I explained Falcor's high charisma in your game, like he was kind of like what was I gonna say?
Sexy Dragonborn model.
He's a scholar, but also a diplomat. Like that was kind of his thing. When he came into contact with that magic, I like I said, it amplified his charisma, but really I just placed that stat there.
Yeah,
So-
you can take, especially anything that's linked to magic that you get at character creation, that something has happened, from a deity, from your bloodline, from, an external source, that something has happened, and, now this is done differently.
Well, yeah, I mean, a great example is those attributes you get bumped as you gain levels in D&D, and you happen to be a holy character. Like, you could absolutely say they're divine blessings, and it's not because you actually got any stronger.
Right.
Yeah.
You go to do stuff that requires physical strength, and like the clouds part, the beam of sunshine, plays upon you, and the ground around you. The angels sing in the background. It doesn't have to be physicality.
I want a ringtone of that.
I'm being on
We'll just take the MP3 and then everyone can.
Yeah,
have that.
just loop it.
You don't want Fa slay you.
Oh, that was pretty good too.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be the start or the end of that one.
Man, that's
So with Dave and Ryan, you both brought up good points about characterizations of your PCs. Your characters that weren't necessarily obvious to everybody. So the way your dwarf acts with people, I just thought he was being a dwarf. Well, that's my elven prejudice against pretty much every single dwarf ever. I actually like him more than a lot of dwarves, so I give him a pass on stuff. But with Ryan's character, you just being nice to Ted. Well, I just thought it was like paladin camaraderie. Well, over a campaign.
it was.
Very camaraderie. If there was more time, I would have pushed it further and further.
Yeah. In a one
Can I
shot,
ride on your lion?
you felt like you did everything that you were going to do for that period of time without making it obnoxious.
At a certain point, it would have been Ted's character would have had to rebuke my character, turn him down, as anybody in a courtship gets rebuked at a certain point.
Or go with it.
I just don't feel about
or you
you.
could just go with it.
Yeah, it's like I just don't feel about you in that way. So in both those instances, those might not be picked up, but they're things that you're doing anyway. So a lot of times in a one shot, it's kind of, or when you have a smaller amount of time to work with, having more overt things to go on.
Characterizations.
Yeah, like your chain thing. I figured you were into some kind of thing because you've got imps chained, you've got chains everywhere. You're like a particular. You're a paladin of a particular deity.
Yeah.
Of manacles. So I got that part right away, but the other part was just not overt enough, and I don't think it should have been.
Yeah.
I think you played it well for that amount. But had we gone on for 6 sessions, 7 sessions more, and seen more interaction, that could have been more of people thinking oh, what's going on?
Yeah, my character would hang out with female characters, but he never made any kind of move, but he would be very friendly with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. He's
Polite.
kind of
He had a
that.
politeness
Polite
with
and
female
a good
characters.
rapport with them. But, nothing
And
else.
the thing to really look at is that regardless of how the rest of the people at the table perceive or not perceive those type of things, it's important to do because by you making those choices and by playing those choices, those characters become more real, and it's yet another step off for when you sit down at the table. Okay, how do I get into this character? How do I play him or her, depending upon what you're doing. So it's I think it's important to make those kind of things, and the more things you have to make that character feel more real, the better it is for everyone at the table.
Yeah, one last thing for me, I wanted to say you can search and there, Google or whatever you like to search through on the internet. Go look at images for character traits. There are just pages and pages of just lists of character traits. Some of them are alphabetical order, so I mean it's a lot to go through, but some of them are categorized. And just check out and say, well, this guy's got he's strong and he's dexterous. Well, is he adventurous? Is he kind of introvert because he's worried about hurting people with his strength? Or is he very confident? Is he like big fish in a small pond kind of feel to him? Is he arrogant about his strength? Has he solved everything through his strength? That's the kind of thing you want to kind of think about for how your character developed as their stats developed.
Could be natural and never tested.
Yeah, it could just be insanely strong, and it's just simply the blacksmith's apprentice is what he used his strength for. Or maybe he hoofed it with a whole bunch of sacks of grain all the time for his grandma or something. But he's insanely strong, but he's never done anything with it. Maybe he likes to talk to squirrels and stuff, and that, he doesn't need to test his strength against squirrels, but he's just like a big bear of a guy.
Well, and also, too, you can set your character up for character arcs. Like, the thing that, maybe he solves every problem with strength. So, like, that, like, as the player, at some point, your character is going to have that realization that, like, this didn't work out so well when, like, I tried to go toe-to-toe with a Minotaur or something like that. Something that, when you start to realize there's things beyond you, that your character gets to, like, grow, and you get to kind of play with that, like, his realization of things, of like...
Or trying to charge through a wall multiple times, you might realize it might be a bad idea.
Yeah. He gains some perspective on the things that
Yeah, growing and changing
Several
of your own
dozen
perspective is good for character development as well. So going from one type of stance for your character to another. In Ted's game, I've got a good example of that. With my character's Elven Merchant, he's from a noble family. He's like 7th in line for being the head of the household when his father passes. He's an elf, so he's probably not going to happen anytime soon. And he wants to prove himself. So he's really into merchanting. He thinks everything can be at least tried to negotiate. And very recently, even though he's a lawful good character, he tried to negotiate for some pixies and other magical little fae folk to help him take care of some gnolls. And they just were like, our home's been destroyed and pixies have been killed by this terrible monster. And it was an ogre mage. And I'm just like, hey, what do you think about helping us out? And we'll help you out. And,
right, so he's wheeling and dealing. Like,
yeah, I'm still wheeling and dealing. I'm going to help them. But I really felt like, well, everything can be solved when people come to a financial or monetary or
And if more of
task agreement.
But interestingly enough, that fits with more of the Fae and contracts and stuff like that. Like you're going like in a way more old world Fae. We're like, we'll broker a deal and like I'll help you, you help me.
And if more of the party actually would have been on board, it had a chance.
Well, the dwarf shut me down.
But the rest of the party were appalled.
It didn't have enough gold in it for the dwarf.
Yeah, the elf and the druid were all the druid and nature paladin were all about using the pixies as soldiers.
Well, I think
but the dwarf was like, I don't think it's a good idea. They're little, they're small, they get squished. I don't think it's going to be good for these guys at all. We should probably keep them safe.
Yeah, and like if Hemsworthy were there in that situation, it would be situational. Like if you could do a thing where they're doing more subterfuge, covert things like sabotaging their weapons, it's fine. But you obviously don't put wee folk in.
No, they were looking to do of like causing chaos because pixies are invisible and they can cause a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
So I mean, it definitely could have gone either way.
I think it'd have been great, and I think. My merchant mostly deals with money, but yeah, more like the Fae kind of contract. We'll do something for you, you're going to do something for us, and then everything will be happy and fine.
But that's a perfect example of different characters having characterizations, or different players having characterizations of their characters that aren't necessarily in agreement. And then it gets to come out at the table in role playing scenarios.
And the funny thing is, while my character's irritated at Dave's dwarf. A little slightly more irritated than normal for him being a dwarf, but I have a higher level of respect for him as a dealer, a kind of like wheeler dealer. Even though I've never considered him that kind of person, I'm like, Like kind of more
Ah,
like a
he was able to shoot my deal down.
like an adversarial kind of like competition almost. So now I'm going to see about trying to make some more deals with him out knowing.
That's because dwarves are naturally shrewd.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thrifty.
So, but
These are goals.
he's actually like higher up on the radar for all the people now as a person in my respects. I actually gained respect for him even while I was really aggravated with him as a character. So.
Yeah, and that's just another example of sort of character growth. Like your character from level 1 to level 20 shouldn't be the exact
It should
same
change.
character.
It
Yeah,
shouldn't be like Drizzt and Duerden where it's the same character all the way through.
Yeah.
17 books. But
Yeah.
there should be growth and change.
yeah.
Oh, one of the major things about that character is he's a nature cleric, not by choice, and he's moving more towards being a actual nature cleric and devout nature cleric rather than some kind of mercantile background that he.
And eventually he gets rid of all of his worldly possessions.
Yeah,
That's all.
I doubt that's gonna happen.
How can I ever trade anything if I don't own?
I mean, the
anything?
dynamic, the dualism of that sort of like commerce and
Yeah.
like preserving natural habitat.
Well, he's creating a big grove where he lives, so perhaps someday he'll consider that worldly goods are no longer
As valuable.
because he has
Or
everything provided for him.
he does like nature excursion packages where like people can rough it in the wilderness.
That's actually the purpose of his thing.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I already have a lodge available for nobles who want to glam.
To rough it, yeah.
To
glam camp.
Oh,
Yeah,
jeez.
yeah. So there you go.
All right. Well, I think we've wandered off the trail on this one.
No way, we totally stayed on the trail.
So let us know what you guys think in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, even subscribe.
You can check out all of our articles over at nerdarchy.com.
You can check out Nerdarchy, the forum.
And you can also peruse Nerdarchy, the Instagram, or just Nerdarchy on Instagram, actually.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.
Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy here for Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with the full crew today.
Ryan.
Ted.
Nate.
And today we're going to do a player's tip, and we're going to get into character with characterizing your character. Can we say character a few more times?
That's a lot of character.
Characterization of
But
character's character.
but we have to rudely interrupt that and tell people about the Nerdarchy newsletter. So if you guys want to be up to
The
date,
Nerdarchy newsletter, what is it, man?
Jesus Christ! Here, take my money. Sorry, I'll buy you a sandwich. So the Nerdarchy newsletter is where you can get most up to date.
Someone who isn't comfortable with role playing yet, or is new to the hobby. I prefer to tackle this from that perspective because I feel like it's going to benefit more people that way.
Right.
Really, this game, right? We're a group of adults here playing make believe. Okay, so sometimes it can be a little hard to act weird in front of your friends, and it is weird because you're essentially putting on like this mini performance where you're acting and you're getting into this role of a character that you've created, to play in this game, right?
Yeah.
So,
and if you're not like a theater geek or whatever, like it's significantly harder if you're like the crossover nerd jock, like it's quite a different experience.
yeah, I mean, maybe you can practice with your honey a little bit beforehand, but hey,
Yeah.
well, or maybe you don't want to do that in your game table.
Right.
But so this can be really a tough obstacle, but you don't have to do it all at once. Like you can ease into it. You can come up. Like I've done several tips on the newsletter about this, and Ryan has an article in the queue waiting to go on a way to use a particular feat that's going to help identify a character using that and make them a little more unique, and the role playing can actually spring from that. We've all done it where we focused on different attributes from the character, or whether it's their class or their race, when you're playing with type or against type. There's all these different things you can kind of chuck in there and use to
on what's going on with Nerdarchy, other nerdy news. Dave even sneaks in some like unique tips, player tips, GM tips in
happens
there
from time to time.
Yeah.
I read it.
Yeah, and Nate reads it. So that's definitely a
This
incentive.
game's already gotten better.
Yeah,
But is that all?
But no, wait, there's more. You can also learn how to game with Nerdarchy. We're going to be getting ready to, within the next month, in December 2015, because this will be here for a while, hopefully. We'll be running games through Google Hangouts, and you can find out how to do that. So,
But only if you sign up for the newsletter.
In the description below.
That's true, so do that. And back to our regular scheduled programming. of
Characterization of character's character.
Yeah. That
So-
are charactery.
We've been inspired to do this because we have just got done. We just got back from Ontario, Canada. We were out there doing a keynote speaker thing.
Yeah. We did the modern D&D Warlock Pact. What is the one with the Ghost in the Machine where we like beamed there and
Yeah,
then we beamed
and
back?
then beam back.
Yeah, we're like epic level.
Epic.
Ghost in the Machine Warlocks.
So, what about this characterization? We're talking
Well-
about character traits, the stats, basically, and what's on the mechanics of the paper, and how to turn that into
Basically-
like a real character.
Fumbling your water.
Yeah, fumbling your water. Basically, we want to talk about how you can as players get into character, and we can look at it from several different ways. You can look at it from an experienced role player, someone who's confident and comfortable role playing, or we can look at it as